G'day, battlers, and today we are back to talk about another local Play Pokemon tournament, but this one is extra special, not just because I'm in it, but because this was the first local tournament held in Australia in the Oceanic region to award championship points. So, for those who weren't aware, Play Pokemon just allowed the Oceanic region to start hosting local tournaments as of March 1st, and so very first weekend of the month, a few different communities all started hosting their local tournaments, with this one in on the Central Coast in New South Wales being the first one to actually run. So very first local tournament to award championship points. Definitely a pretty cool thing to sort of be able to tag along to. But essentially today we're going to be going through my run through this local tournament because I was actually able to come away with a pretty good result and actually took home some championship points, all leading up to qualifying for the World Championships. Now, I'm not planning to qualify for the World Championships, but I definitely, it was nice to sort of get onto the leaderboard. I felt pretty good, especially because I did beat one of not only the best in the country, but I beat one of the best players in the world to sort of land those championship points. But we'll get to those battles a little bit later. But with that said, if you do want to skip straight to the battles, because I am going to preamble a little bit about the tournament and about the teams, if you want to skip straight to the battles, timestamps, as always, are going to be down in the little progress bar down below, so you can skip straight to the battles. But essentially, it was the first weekend of the season, which meant that it was the first weekend with some move updates. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, because I actually like the ruling. Play Pokemon has changed it so that instead of you can't use Pokemon until for 24 hours until after they've been released, they've made it so that you can't use new Pokemon and moves until the Tuesday after they're released. So in this case, we couldn't use any of the new moves per se. So for example, Sand Attack, we couldn't use, but we could use things like Aqua Tail that had even been buffed, and we could use things like Brick Break that had been buffed. So you can see in my team in the bottom right-hand corner, in the very bottom right-hand corner, I've got Shadow Dragonair. Shadow Dragonair has Aqua Tail, which was buffed, and I can use that because it sort of already had it in its move pool ready to go. So it's sort of like, it's the same as the Utrecht special event that happened in this same weekend. But essentially, yeah. So with that, let's just start taking a look at the teams and seeing how I sort of landed my first championship points. So bottom right hand corner, you can already see it is a bit of a goofy team. And I promise you, it's not double charm. So first off, we have WAILMER. Obviously, I was going to bring WAILMER. It brought me to top 6 at the Sydney Regional Championships last year, so it felt only fitting that I would bring it again to the local tournament for the second time I've ever competed in Play Pokemon in New South Wales, in our state. Figured it would bring along, and it definitely brought home the goods, so shout out WAILMER. But I've also brought along Bastiodon, which was a bit of a meme pick. I just thought it was a little bit goofy and funny. I did actually call it on my team, like its in-game name was second place, because, I've seen Caleb Peng come second with it 3 times. I've seen Triple Crit come second at Melbourne Regionals. I saw Rob Drogo come second with it last year at Perth Regionals. I haven't seen it win things since Rob Drogo actually, again, won the Perth Regionals back in 2022, which it's almost been 2 years now. So, I haven't seen Bastiodon win anything for a while. Did draw the ire of Caleb Peng, but hey. Just win a regional, man. Just win something with Bastiodon, and I'll boost up the nickname. But for now, it's second place, and I definitely thought it was just a bit of a fun bring. I've never really done a whole lot of competing with it, but I thought it was fun. Then we, of course, brought our best buddy Whiscash that I best buddied for the Melbourne Regional Championship. It is using the best buddy boost, so it's like naturally at like 1440 CP, and then it's like best buddy boosted up to the 1500 mark. I just thought it was pretty funny going up to Melbourne Regionals, and it definitely was. So I brought that along as well. This is very much a meme team by the seams of things, because then we have Whimsicott and Alolan Ninetales. Now, neither of these two fairies are running Charm. We've got Fairy Wind on Whimsicott, and we have Powder Snow on Alolan Ninetales, sort of leaving the fast move pressure to the other ones, but yeah, just wanted some fairy coverage. And Whimsicott especially I wanted to bring because I felt like with this sort of like intermediate move change meta, I felt like a lot of people were going to bring Dragonair because Aqua Tail was just buffed. Whimsicott beats that. And I also felt like people were going to bring a lot of Whiscash because it's still good. Plus, there was going to be a little bit of Poliwrath around. So I felt like Whimsicott was a really good pick to actually bring into this tournament. And I completely stand by that decision. It worked out pretty well for me, I think. Then Alolan Ninetale, it's just standard. It is what it is. And we, of course, brought that Shadow Dragonair that I built specially for this tournament because I didn't have one and I wanted to use something with a new new move. So we brought in the Shadow Dragonair with Aqua Tail. So round one, we are up against Bamboss, one of the greatest people in the Australian community. He put so much work into actually sort of organizing a lot of tournaments, putting so much stuff together, sort of leads the charge for the Australis Shield tournaments as well, that you may have seen me stream over on Twitch potentially. By the way, Twitch, follow, link, description, yada yada yada. But also someone who has been big in helping organize locals in the Sydney community. So we've got his team over on the right hand side as well. He's running that Best Buddy Lickitung, Chargebug, Shadow Dragonair, Shadow Gligar, Cresselia, and Shadow Poliwrath. So sort of straight away going into sort of this first round, I was kind of like, okay, what is going to be good here? What are we going to use? And straight away I was kind of like, Dragonair feels like a pick that he doesn't have a hard counter for. So the best answer he's got is sort of his own Shadow Dragonair. Chargebug, I resist moves there, and it just provides a lot of neutral damage. And with the Aqua Tail buff, it felt like it might be able to do some work. Actually, by the way, this tournament was literally like 2 hours after the move update came through, so we were still learning what the buffs actually were. But it felt like Dragonair was a pretty safe pick for me. So then it was sort of a question of how do we guard against that Dragonair, and so I was like, well, I guess we bring our Alolan Ninetales just to sort of powder snow away. Alolan Ninetales also seems like a pretty safe pick on the whole. Like, it's good against Gligar, it's okay against Cresselia. It's got some play against Poliwrath. It's sort of neutral against Lickitung. Obviously really good against Dragonair. I should mention as well that Bamboss, this is obviously open team sheets. Cresselia is actually running Confusion, so it's a little bit more... it's interesting. It does a lot more damage up the front, but gets the charge moves a little slower. So, it's sort of pick your poison a little bit. But I felt like A9 Dragonair sort of felt like a pretty decent combo, and then I just threw Bastion because I thought it was going to be a little bit funny. So let's jump into sort of game number one, and essentially we go in with the Ninetales lead, and we actually catch the Shadow Gligar. So straight away we're in a pretty good spot. Really, Powder Snow would be doing a lot of damage there. They swap into Cresselia, we swap into Bastion, and as much as this is already feeling RPS, this game in particular does sort of come back a little bit to bite me, but regardless, this is very much just a case of Wallface is doing what Wallface does and just soaking up all of the damage from Cresselia. Because Cresselia has Confusion, it's in a slightly worse spot than it would be otherwise. It would be really nice to be able to just Psycho Cut and get up to Grass Knots really quickly, so you could just sort of try and spam some damage onto Bastion. As is, it's just going to be outpaced here, and Bastion is just going to keep on smacking down. I think I might end up throwing a Stone Edge and undercharging, I think, just to try and keep a little bit of Cresselia to farm. Oh no, we just go full force. We take Cresselia out. Poliwrath actually comes in and farms us down, and now we're going, okay, we know that Gligar's in the back. We're going to want our Alolan Ninetales for that. So let's bring in our Dragonair now. And Dragonair is just going to be able to sort of... it's not going to be able to soak the damage, but at least we can sort of do something here. So we actually shield up an Icy Wind, and then they swap out into the Shadow Gligar. So I swap straight back into Alolan Ninetales. At this point, Bamboss, if he burns a shield, it's going to be a little bit dicey. So he actually ends up letting it go, absolutely destroying that Gligar. And now it is right back to Poliwrath. And Poliwrath has 2 shields to our 1. We've got 2 Pokemon that can do a little bit of work against this Poliwrath, but not great. We actually throw the Weather Ball there because I was sort of running under the assumption, okay, I feel like he's not going to be following the counts here. I feel like he doesn't know how much energy Alolan Ninetales has, so I just sort of hoped. I was like, please just shield this, and he did. Second one, we just threw to get a little bit of chip damage, and now we just need to be able to Dragon Breath down before Poliwrath can get to 2 moves. He gets to the first move here. The question is, does he have a second move? If he has a second one, he'll be able to get another Icy Wind off, and it will be enough to KO, but the Dragon Breath goes through, and we take out game number 1. Feeling pretty happy about that. Even though we got a little bit dicey, we did sort of RPS it a little bit, which is sort of the nature of Bastion. But, it sort of is what it is. And to be honest, going into game 2, I was just like, well, look, let's try and run the Jakobovich strats. Yakko at both Brisbane Regionals and Melbourne Regionals, he ran sort of a consistent 3, sort of like game after game after game. So I was like, well, that one did win it for me. It could have got a little bit dicey, but let's sort of just run the exact same thing again and see if we can try and get the same results. So we literally just run Alolan Ninetales in the lead with Basti and Dragonair again. But this time we catch a Poliwrath lead, and this is sort of an interesting spot because, as you can see, those counters are seriously adding up onto our Alolan Ninetales, so we're kind of going, ooh, we're only really going to get one shot at throwing a Dazzling Gleam, unless we baited, but we decided to go straight for it, hope that Bamboss let this go through. but he shields up, and now I'm going, how do we win this? This Ninetales is so low. He might be able to counter me all the way down, and I end up swapping into Dragonair and catching the Icy Wind, which not a good play. I was trying to avoid him farming me all the way down, and so like I would have taken an Icy Wind anyway, but it's just like not great because now this Dragonair is debuffed. It's throwing Aqua Tails, even though Aqua Tail just received a buff in the move update. When you throw an Icy Wind debuff onto it, it really just brings it right back down. So it is adding a fair bit of damage onto this Cresselia. Like, it is getting quite low, but now this Future Sight is going to take us out, and now we have a choice to make. Now, I decided to bring in Bastiodon here because I feel like Cresselia's got confusion. If I brought in a lot of Ninetales, it would just be adding way too much damage, and I might need that Ninetales to try and irk something out. Maybe I can try and get like a Weather Ball onto Gligar or something. So I feel like I decided that I'm going to need that Alola Ninetales. It looks like I was actually went for a last minute, like, oh, maybe we can get a little bit of energy, but here's Bassi. It's got a little bit of energy, knows that Poliwrath is going to come back in, and again, I know that I can't get to a Dazzling Gleam, so I end up throwing a Weather Ball just to be like, oh, get a shield, happy days. Again, wasn't aware of where the energy was at, but now it is Gligar coming in, and even though there are no shields, there's no shields on either side. So this Stone Edge will hurt the Gligar because it is Shadow, but Gligar is going to be able to outpace us to a dig and take us out in game number 2 and tying the score back to a 1-1. Definitely didn't play super clean, but if I'm being honest, I feel like it wasn't a very good team of 3 that I was sort of using in these first 2 games. I got lucky in the first one, sort of a little bit of RPS, and game 2, Bamboss punished me for it. So game 3, I was like, okay, let's try and strategize a little bit better here. And so game 3, I actually decided to bring in Dragonair Double Fairy. So Dragonair, Alola Ninetales, Whimsicott. Dragonair ready to sort of take anything on. Again, there's sort of no bad matchup for Dragonair on Bamboss's team. So, and if there was a Mirror Dragonair that I would just swap into one of my fairies, sort of ABB, keep Dragonair for a little bit later, so that, and see what happens. But also, like, again, Alola Ninetales, pretty strong against Bamboss's team. So I'm kind of like, I think we might be pretty sweet here with Whimsicott as sort of a closer to try and catch that Poliwrath. If Poliwrath is in the lead, then we probably just sort of stick around because, again, both of our fairies are going to be a little bit scared of Poliwrath because Icy Wind is really going to hurt. But, we figure that between the 2 of them plus Dragonair with the neutral damage, the 3 Pokemon can probably handle Poliwrath pretty well. But, yeah, Bastiodon, definitely not coming this game. Way too risky when that Shadow Poliwrath is running around. And we weren't going to bring WAILMER either again because there was too many threats with the Grass Knot from Cresselia and the Charge Bug both hanging around. Plus Poliwrath is going to win that matchup too. So I figured let's leave WAILMER on the bench this time and just go in with the 3, with Whiscash just not really providing enough value either. So let's go in. We get the Dragonair in the lead up against the Gligar. So we're like, okay, obviously our Alola Ninetales would be really good in the back, but I think we're going to be able to put a lot of pressure onto this Gligar with our Aqua Tails. So we farm up past Aqua Tail, thinking there may be a swap. There's no swap, so we throw the buffed Aqua Tail and get the first shield of the game. Bamboss actually throwing the shields up pretty quick this time. In comes a dig, and we're actually going to completely let it through. We're like, okay, again, Alola Ninetales is really safe against this team. So if we just sort of put all our chips onto Alola Ninetales, we're going to be able to shield up here, farm all the way down, have a ton of energy, and there's nothing that's going to come in that is going to love seeing this. And he actually brings in the Poliwrath. So I go, okay, you shielded the first time. Don't shield this time. Let the Dazzling Game through. And it goes through. So I'm like, happy days. And then it's a Dragonair in the back. And it's like, oh, man, you're not even going to see the Whimsicott that's in the back here. Like, this could not have gone better. But, like, yeah. And it doesn't even shield. It just knows, the writing's on the wall. And Bamboss lets us take him out in that very first round. But, yeah, I was pretty happy with that sort of team of 3. I feel like it was much stronger than the team of 3 I was bringing in the first 2 games. And sort of we get a first round win of the tournament. So GG's to Bamboss. And then our round 2 opponent is Mika0602. Hasn't done a lot of play Pokemon tournamentage, but definitely a very strong competitor and a team that I was a little bit spooked by. So he's got the Shadow Whiscash, the Lickitung, the Shadow Alolan Sandslash, the Shadow Gligar, the Trevenant, and the regular Poliwrath, non-Shadow. So again, I'm similarly scared of that Poliwrath. I'm like, ooh, okay, Bastiodon is always going to be a little bit of a risk. And after the lessons that we learned from the last game, I figure, let's leave Bastiodon at home this time, hey? WAILMER also, like, it's got a little bit of play here, but Trevenant was sort of spooking me because I figure, like, Back at Sydney Regional Championships, I had a double water team, although that time it was WAILMER Lantern, and I was attracting a lot of Trevenants. Now, at Sydney, I was able to exploit that by using Shadow, Alolan Muck, sort of a lot of games. Shadow, Alolan Muck knocked our ABB team, but I didn't really have a solid Trevenant answer this time. I wasn't really prepared for it. It was very retro, so I was kind of like, ooh, okay. What do we do here? So I decide also that I'm a little bit weak to Shadow, Alolan Sandslash. Not that I don't have counters for it, but it's sort of like it beats my Bastiodon, it beats my Whimsicott, it's able to beat my Alolan Ninetales, it's able to beat my Dragonair. I kind of only have one solid answer, and it's Whiscash. So I decide that I'm going to build an ABB team with Whiscash in the lead, sort of as my one answer, and hope, like, if I don't see a Sandslash, I'm going to swap out to some other Pokemon to try and bait it in. So I decided to bring Dragonair as a bit of a safe swap, and sort of to bait out the Sandslash. So that's sort of my game plan. Go in with the Whiscash, and if it isn't Sandslash, go into Dragonair literally just to bait out the Alolan Sandslash. So jumping into game number 2, we have the Whiscash in the lead, and we don't get a Whiscash. We don't get an Alolan Sandslash, so we're going to farm up a little bit of energy on the Lickitung. I don't think we quite get up to a Scald, and then we end up... Oh no, we do get to a Scald, and then swap out the Dragonair, again, hoping that we can sort of bait out that Alolan Sandslash from the back, so that our Whiscash can then sort of make quick work of it and clean up the rest. But they end up not swapping here, and I'm kind of sitting here going like, okay, I guess we have to burn shields. Like, they just realize that by how much Body Slam does, they're going to be able to win with Lickitung, so I get it, fair enough. So we stay in, we farm up a bit more energy, and we start throwing the buffed Aqua Tails, trying to just do as much damage as possible. At this point, like, he's not really going to swap into Alolan Sandslash, so I'm like, oh, okay, what do we do now? Because that was sort of my strategy here. So I end up going for another Aqua Tail. This would take out Lickitung if he lets it go through. And he does, so Lickitung goes down, and in comes Trevenant. So I'm like, oh, okay. This isn't great, because now we have a 0 to 2 shield disadvantage. And then he catches the Weather Ball onto the Poliwrath as well. So he didn't even bring Sandslash. And now I'm just sitting here going like, okay, there is almost no way for me to win this game. I swap into a Whiscash and throw a Scald here, trying to keep my Alolan Ninetales around, because I'm like, the only way I'll win this game is with Alolan Ninetales. I need to somehow get a Weather Ball onto the Trevenant, and I need to see this Poliwrath go down. I end up getting the Scald debuff onto the Poliwrath. I didn't get the Scald debuff back, so I'm like, is there remotely a chance? And look, the answer is no. There's still 2 shields up. I try to undercharge on the Poliwrath, because I'm like, any possible way I can find an advantage here. Maybe I can do something. But yeah, the Scald comes through, in comes Ninetales, swaps into the Trevenant, and only needs to get a single Shadow Ball off, and this Ninetales goes down, and that is GG's on game number 1 up against Mika0602. Again, not like, I was really just in the mindset, like, I felt like it was obvious that Sandslash was going to come, because I'm like, it's so good against my team. We're going to see Sandslash. That's what I need to focus all of my strategizing behind. And it didn't come. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, we need to adjust here, definitely. So I'm like, okay, what do we do? If Sandslash isn't a problem, if he feels threatened to bring Sandslash, do we go for a very different strategy and just try and destroy what he sort of brought? So I was like, I couldn't, at the time, I couldn't really figure out a safe team to bring, because I was like, partially that's on me, because the team that I've brought to this tournament it's certainly prone to RPS, to say the least. I mean, we've got Bastiodon and 2 fairies, plus Whiscash, plus Dragonair. There's a lot of things that are able to be hard countered in various scenarios. And so it was hard to bring a team that felt very safe to me, which was a little bit unfortunate. So I decided to just go, well, what worked in the first round? Well, I brought that double fairy line that sort of gave me some coverage to the Poliwrath. It gives me some coverage to the Whiscash, gives me some play against Lickitung. They've both got some play against Trev, although Whimsicott not too much play. And then we've obviously got that along the Ninetales that has nice coverage of the Gligar, as we saw against Bamboss. So I'm like, okay, maybe we just run double fairy, and I'm like, we just have to make a call here. And I'm like, okay, he's going to bring Lickitung in the lead again. So we're going to just run pretty much the only counter to Lickitung we have, which again, like, imagine going into this with only one solid Lickitung counter. Again, otherwise it's just neutral. And so I brought in Bastiodon in the lead. It was like, here we go. I learned no lessons from the Poliwrath, and we actually called the lead. So I'm like, okay, here we go. Here goes Poliwrath, and I make a mistap there. I swapped into Alola Ninetales. I meant to swap into Whimsicott. Not that, like, both of these Pokemon are in a little bit of a dire straits. Like, we saw how Alola Ninetales struggled a little bit up against Poliwrath earlier. The counter's just doing so much damage. So I try to get a Dazzling Gleam off there as one final hope, but I'm like, oh man. So Whimsicott comes in, but Whimsicott's struggle is that it's also weak to Icy Wind, so it's not actually that good of a Poliwrath counter. It's way better against something like Whiscash that doesn't actually have that counterplay against you. But Whimsicott is like, oh, we need to get a move off here. So we go for the first Grass Knot, hoping they let it go through. He doesn't shield. So he does shield, sorry. So now we're like, okay, well, we need to get another one, and he catches again, catching the Grass Knot on it to Trevenant. I really should have been, I wasn't on the ball here, but Mika was just playing me so hard here. And now Trevenant comes in, we swap into Basti. I don't know why we threw the move. I knew that Trevenant had a move, and for some reason I still tapped on it anyway. We get charge attack priority here, so I sort of undercharge here. I'm like, well, I need to get something out of this. So I do a little bit of damage, try and smack down all the way down. We just don't even do that. We just undercharge too much. Actually, at this point, I turned to Rick and said I chucked a U from his World Championship game, but now Poliwrath comes back in, counters us down, and then here's Whimsicott. We can shield up the first Icy Wind, but again, Poliwrath is going to be able to get to another Icy Wind before we can get to a Grass Knot, and this is just GG's here. So Mika taking us out 0-2. Definitely some misplays in that game, but really, I wouldn't say misplays so much, more just not playing to Mika's skill level. Like, Mika was ready for the catches, knew when I was going to throw, and I didn't try to counteract that. I just sort of went, hey, I have the move, let's throw the move. I was sort of in panic mode. I was like, we need to get these moves off because otherwise we're in some serious trouble. And Mika was definitely able to exploit that and just sort of dominate me in that game. And so I'm now 1-1, and we're actually, because we had less than 9 people, it's actually only 3 rounds of Swiss, and there isn't any top cut. So we're actually going to the final round of the tournament, and I know that I sort of spoiled the result here a little bit earlier in the video, but regardless, RicFlareon, if you aren't familiar, you should be, because he's just seriously one of the best battlers out there. He won the first Melbourne Regional Championship back in 2022. He's qualified for Worlds 2 years in a row. He came top 16 at Worlds 2 years in a row. And if that doesn't sort of sell him as someone that is incredibly skilled in this game, I don't know what will, because he is cracked. Definitely one of the best, and definitely an opponent I was scared to face, as he has definitely beaten me every time we've ever played. We've played in a few Sylph tournaments. I came down to Sydney a few times to play in their locals for the last season as well. RicFlareon demolished me every single time. Even with, like, we've played some meme teamage in the past as well in the Sylph tournaments. I remember one moment where I had a WAILMER team up against his Flareon team. I think he beat me 2-1. But RicFlareon definitely very talented, so I was expecting to lose going to this round. But we can see his team over on the right hand side. He's running that best buddy Lickitung. He's running Altaria, Talonflame, Shadow Gligar, Registeel, and Shadow Whiscash. So triple flyer, which I was kind of like, okay, interesting. Bastiodon, little bit of play maybe. Bastiodon vs Gligar, not a clean matchup for Basti, but at least something that it can do. But you'll notice that there's a lot of RPS potentially. Not that these games were RPS necessarily, but we see the Bastiodon has got good matchups against Licky, Altaria, Talonflame, iffy matchup against Gligar, and then bad matchups, really bad matchups against Registeel and Whiscash. Something like Whiscash has got some good matchups against the Registeel. It's got good matchup against the Talonflame. Doesn't do great against the Lickitung. Whiscash is a mirror match. Altaria, we don't have Blizzard anymore. So I'm kind of like, okay, what do we bring into this team? And so I sort of decide I'm going to bring in Bastiodon because there's just so much potential for it to do well here. I'm going to sort of gamble on the fact that my Dragonair is also quite strong against Rick's team. So it's got good play against Whiscash. It's got good play against Talonflame, against Lickitung. It does have play against Registeel, despite some things I've said in the past. I just wasn't aware of how much play Dragonair actually has. Actually, and now that Aquatail has been buffed, maybe it has even more play. I haven't actually looked at the revised Dragonair Registeel matchups. And again, this tournament happened like 2 hours after the move updates, so no one really had. But also, I was going to bring Whiscash because it felt like a sort of a safer round out pick. So it's got some play against things that Dragonair's weak to and things that Bastiodon's weak to. So it's like it's sort of our glue of the team. Plus, we can try and get some Skull debuffs, which was my strategy at Melbourne Regionals when I had to face Mikey Morgs. I was like, let's just go for Skull debuffs. Like this guy's better than me. Let's go for RNG to try and win this thing. So we go Bastiodon in the lead. Dragonair safe swap in case anything looks a bit dicey. And so we jump into game number 1 against RicFlareon, one of the best in the world. And we have Bassi into Shadow Whiscash. So we're like, get out of here, run, go into our safe swap Shadow Dragonair. And RicFlareon's actually staying in here. So I'm like, is he trying to go for just a bit of chip damage? Because Mud Bomb definitely hurts Shadow Dragonair. And then he swaps out into the Lickitung. So I'm like, okay, he doesn't have a ton of energy hanging out on Whiscash. Just have to be aware of that. Go for the Aqua Tail onto the Lickitung, just because, it is buffed. We're trying out the buff moves and we don't get to a second one, just barely. So now I'm like, okay, we need our Whiscash. Let's bring in Bastiodon here because we don't really... we don't want a Bastiodon on the Whiscash later, so we're going to bring in our Whiscash now. And Basti is just going to be able to finish the job, take this Lickitung out, soak up all of the damage, and just have a ton of energy ready to go into the back matchup. So it's yada, 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 eat some Power Whips. Actually swap out into Whiscash because I see that there's a bit of a farming opportunity after that Power Whip comes through. I know that this can't be a Power Whip, so I let the Body Slam come through and just keep on mud-shotting down. I know that I need an energy advantage. I need some sort of advantage on Rick's Whiscash, so that's why I wanted to get this energy now. I throw the Scald. I get the debuff onto Rick's Whiscash as well, which is really handy. I charge up to the Scald again and throw the Mud Bomb. I think Rick might have been having a little bit of a stutter on his end because I think he was trying to get the move off and it didn't go off. But regardless, we get the Mud Bomb through. We shield up what turns out to be a Scald. We do get debuffed as well. And now go for another Mud Bomb to try and to weaken this Whiscash down. And now we're kind of going, okay, we have a shield advantage. We've got our Bastiodon. What's in the back? And I decide that we're going to keep our Whiscash in case it's something like a Gligar, and we might need the Scald. There's the swap out into Lickitung, trying to catch the move. We keep our calm. We swap into our Bastiodon. Again, wanting to keep our Whiscash alive, knowing that Whiscash has some energy, and Registeel comes in. In this moment, I sort of remember, I was like, wait until you see the typing in the top right. If it is Steel, go for the Flamethrower. If it is anything else, don't. But yeah, Registeel comes in. I'm able to get 2 Flamethrowers because I had so much energy from farming down the Lickitung a little bit earlier. And now Registeel, he needs to throw a move to take me out. And Registeel is already so low. I thought Registeel versus Bastiodon was supposed to be pretty good for Registeel. But somehow we come in here, we farm up energy again. We know we need to be able to get a move off onto that Whiscash because it has energy. So we get up to 2, we throw the first Mud Bomb, take out Registeel, throw the second Mud Bomb, and this will be enough to take out the Whiscash on RicFlareon's side and take game 1 from Rick. So I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? Okay, so we've got to sort of recuperate, recalibrate, see what we're going to do in game number 2 because Rick, again, incredibly talented, has a lot of stock, definitely going to be able to sort of take the next 2 games if we let him. So that game we won, by the way, with a Bastiodon into a Shadow Whiscash. But we managed to get through by keeping our advantage on our Whiscash and also being able to get, our Whiscash in the end onto that Registeel just to finish it off. But to be honest, it sort of just worked out that we had so much energy on Bastiodon that we were able to throw into Registeel, and then we were able to keep an advantage with the Whiscash to just sort of dominate at the end there. But going into game 2, I figure let's try and not get a Bastiodon into Whiscash lead, right? That's maybe something to avoid. So to avoid any sort of RPS shenanigans, he brought 2 Pokemon that were good. He was ABA strong into our Bastiodon. So I'm like, Bastiodon, we're ditching it. We got 1 win. That was pretty good. Let's try something else. So I sort of decide, okay, I feel like our Whiscash Dragonair sort of combo was really good against that team. Whiscash again provides some coverage for the Gligar, for the Registeel, for the Talonflame, and some counterplay for the Mirror, while also being able to get some Skull debuff onto the Lickitung if we need to. Then we have the Dragonair, who's again sort of pretty strong against most of Rick's team. So we just need to bring 1 Pokemon to sort of shore it all together. And I decide that I'm going to make a call. I'm going to go he's going to lead Whiscash again. So I decide that I'm going to bring Whimsicott in the lead. Whimsicott is going to be good against Whiscash. It's going to be pretty bad against the Talonflame. It's going to be pretty bad against the Registeel. It's not going to have a lot of play into the Gligar. It's going to have some play into the Lickitung. So I felt like a little bit of a risk, but against RicFlareon, I was like, I think it's time that we take some risks here. So we go Whimsicott, and we get the Whiscash. So I'm like, okay, here we go. And there's the instant swap out into Registeel. So we're able to instant swap out into Whiscash. And I cannot express, this is probably like the most stressed I was in this tournament. Like, this feels like such a strong matchup. And I was just sitting there going like, this doesn't make sense. Something's wrong here. He's planning something. Like, he's got something cooking back there. This doesn't check out. So we get the first Mud Bomb onto the Registeel, farm up a little bit of extra energy and go for the next Mud Bomb. And at this point, we're sort of expecting that Registeel isn't going to want to hang around. Just isn't able to get to another move as well, which is pretty unfortunate for Rick. Because he could have sort of pushed us to try and go for a 0 to 2 shield disadvantage. But now in comes the Whiscash. We go for the Scold. Again, don't get the debuff this time, but again, Rick has that advantage. We try and catch a move into Whimsicott. Doesn't work out, and he actually brings in the Lickitung. And I'm going like, This feels neutral strong. I feel like we're in a pretty good spot here. We get the Moonblast off, no 1 in 10 debuff, but Lickitung is already below half health. I'm kind of going like, he can't take us out with one move here. We're going to be able to get to another charge move. Are we winning here? He's still got 2 shields. Let's try and burn the shields. So we go for the Seed Bomb, the Grass Knot, to try and get the first shield. Keep on farming up. Lickitung can KO us here, so Rick, again, knows his counts. He waits till we get up to the Grass Knot, then throws the Body Slam to KO us, which is fine by us. We still have a Dragonair ready to go, and Dragonair, like, again, Lickitung not going to be able to take it out. Oh, we actually bring in Whiscash. Interesting. I guess we're sort of just prepared. Dragonair is going to be able to soak up 1 charge. I don't know. I think it's just so we can get to the Scold really quick. We take out the Lickitung. In comes the Whiscash, and I'm sitting here going like, I think Dragonair can win this with 1 shield. So we can take a Mud Bomb, and then we can get our own Mud Bomb off. This will, put pressure onto Rick anyway, and then we can just swap out into our Dragonair. There's no more shields on Rick's side. We just need to Dragon Breath all the way down. We have 1 shield. We can take a Mud Bomb as well, and Rick is not going to be able to get to 2 more Mud Bombs to be able to KO us here. So this is the one. It's going to damage us quite a bit. It's going to bring us pretty low, but then we should be able to Dragon Breath down, and that is GG's, taking out RicFlareon and taking out a 2-1 result in the tournament, which did put me just at 4th place, which was enough to get that 10 championship points towards the World Championships, and put myself on the Play Pokemon leaderboard. So again, I had just an amazing time. Congrats to Valiant Vish as well. Like, I attached some. Like, I can just put some stuff up, I guess, but it was just a really great local experience in, we carpooled. I was actually in Sydney. I live in Newcastle, which is the NJ Collectibles where it was hosted was in Tuggerah, which is sort of halfway between Newcastle and Sydney. And this weekend, I just happened to be in Sydney. So we all carpooled down from Sydney with Taj, Bamboss, and Rick. Thanks to Taj for driving. But then it was just, it was a great time sort of seeing everyone there. Again, Valiant Fish, able to take it out in the end. I do realize this photo doesn't actually have everyone in it. If I there's Mika over on the right-hand side as well. But, there was, more as well. I felt like there was another photo in here. Oh, okay, I see. In addition, this wasn't the only tournament that was held this weekend. I'm going to have to drag this. I'll just hide the other stuff. Let's hide this guy, and let's hide the teams. Boom. There were, again, some other regionals hosted. So just a super quick graphic with the teams are really small on it that do show the sort of winners and the teams from the top 4 from each of the 3. So you can see I'm over there on the right-hand side. But you can also see Echo. This is riddled with typos. I wrote this incredibly sleep deprived from from a big weekend in Sydney. So it's actually Echo Mona. And you can see his team there in Melbourne, Victoria. Shadow XO came out on top, which I was incredibly excited by because she is a really top battler. She's been doing really well these last couple of tournaments, and so really excited to sort of see her come out on top in that number 1 spot with an Azu as well, which is pretty sick. And then over in Perth, we saw Jai take it out with another pretty interesting team with Vigoroth and Mandibuzz rigging up the helm. So again, this is a bit of a different meta because after this weekend, all of the new moves in Pokemon are eligible, but regardless, I just figured I'd bring this up just for good measure so that it's there. But yeah, I had a really good time and appreciate everyone for sort of coming out and making it a good time. And of course, NJ Collectibles for hosting the local. With that said, yeah, I'm not sure what's coming up next. There's actually going to be another local tournament. I should have prepared like an ad or something, because if you are in the New South Wales area, there is another local tournament this Sunday, the 10th of March at Good Games Central. Just send me a message or leave a comment if you want more details, because I would love to see plenty more people there. I think we're sort of aiming for 21. I think that's sort of the number we're shooting for at this tournament, which should be a little bit bigger than this one and also some of the other tournaments that have been held in New South Wales. But yeah, I guess, if I do well in the next one, I might do a recap video of that, or I might do a recap video of the eventual winner. We'll just have to wait and see. Valiant Bish will probably win it and not bring his phone recordings, but regardless, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, especially that subscribe one. Thank you to my patrons and YouTube members as well. And with that, I will see you in the next one. And, shout out to WAILMER for, again, being a great cheerleader. Did so much work. Shout out to WAILMER.